In the early morning hours of August 14, 1901, a German immigrant in Bridgeport, Connecticut, reportedly flew a powered aircraft roughly 1.5 miles over open ground. That's more than 2 years before Kitty Hawk. His name isn't in most history books. And there's a specific legal reason for that, a contract, signed decades later, that made it financially risky for the world's most trusted aviation museum to ever say his name out loud. Gustave Whitehead was born Gustav Weiskopf in Bavaria, emigrated to the United States, and settled in Bridgeport, building gliders and engines out of a modest workshop. Orville and Wilbur Wright were bicycle shop owners from Dayton, Ohio, methodical, well-documented, and, critically, backed by careful record-keeping and, eventually, a very powerful institutional relationship. By the time Whitehead settled in Connecticut, he'd already built a reputation for engines. He manufactured and sold aircraft motors to other experimenters for years, some of which reportedly outperformed anything the Wrights were using at the time. Both men were trying to solve the same problem at the same moment: how to get a heavier-than-air machine to fly under its own power, under control. Only one of them had witnesses lined up to record it for history. On August 14, 1901, Whitehead reportedly flew his aircraft, nicknamed the Condor, roughly 1/2 mile at around 50 feet, according to an account published days later in the Bridgeport Sunday Herald. Over 100 newspapers picked up the story. But no verified photograph of Whitehead actually in the air has ever been conclusively authenticated, and just 3 months later, a local paper ran a very different headline about the same machine failing completely. Witnesses who claimed to have seen Whitehead fly weren't formally interviewed until decades later, some as much as 35 years after the fact, well after memories and motives had time to shift. On December 17, 1903, the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, a flight witnessed by 5 people, photographed and meticulously documented in notebooks the Wrights kept for years. The Wrights' claim had something Whitehead's never did: a paper trail built for exactly this kind of dispute. In 1948, the Smithsonian Institution signed a contract with Orville Wright's estate to finally acquire the original 1903 flyer for display. Buried in that clause was a stipulation: if the Smithsonian, or any of its museums, ever labeled an earlier aircraft as capable of powered, controlled flight before the Wrights, ownership of the flyer could revert back to the estate. In effect, the world's most trusted aviation authority signed away its ability to ever officially credit a rival claim, including Whitehead's, without risking the very artifact the claim was about. The contract stayed hidden for decades, until a researcher uncovered it in 1976 with help from a Connecticut senator, and published it 2 years later. In 2013, a newly surfaced photograph and fresh research led one respected aviation reference guide to formally recognize Whitehead as first. Connecticut's legislature passed a law agreeing. North Carolina's legislature formally objected. The Smithsonian's own historians pushed back hard, calling the 2013 photographic evidence inconclusive at best. The dispute became its own minor culture war, playing out in dueling state license plates. The Smithsonian's official position hasn't changed. It still credits the Wrights, and still says there's no compelling evidence anyone flew before them. The 1948 contract, as far as anyone can confirm, remains in effect today. Whitehead never successfully flew again after 1901. He died in 1927, working in a Bridgeport factory, largely unknown outside a small circle of local historians. His workshop tools and unfinished engines were eventually scattered or lost. For decades, the only people actively arguing his case were a handful of independent researchers, working with newspaper clippings and sworn statements nobody in power was required to take seriously. Whether he actually flew first may never be settled. What's settled is that for over 70 years, the institution best positioned to investigate it had a signed financial reason not to. Kitty Hawk got the statue, the stamps, the state license plate. Bridgeport got a small local museum and a contract clause almost nobody's heard of. It's a strange kind of case file, not a disputed flight, but a disputed contract about who's allowed to dispute the flight. Next time, we go back to a Cambridge laboratory in the 1950s, where a photograph taken by one scientist was shown to 2 others without her knowledge, and became the key to unlocking the structure of DNA. That's next time, on History Brain.